Shabbat, Nathanael, Shabbat, Bashalom, Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh. The name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the Sabbath and peace. Thank you, so be it. The Ali Ma'at Sharai Machad, Psalms 121. Anya, Ryan, Mayemye, Aryan, Mayen, Yaboa, sorry, Yaboa, Mayahu, Shamay, Waratiza, Yanathan, Lama what? Ragalia, Yala, Yanawan, Shashomarka, and Yanawan. Wala Yeshan Jashoma Yashirala Yahweh Shemaria Yahweh Tzavi Ayo Yah Yim Yawoman Hashamash La Akaya Wayarak La Balayala Yahweh Yashemaria Makho Yashimana Pashe Yahweh Yashima Habalaki Babuaya my third well I will Basham Yahusha man.
Psalm 121. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil, shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth even forevermore. Amen.
Amen. Shemaiah Sharela, hero of Israel. Shemaiah Sharela, Yahweh, Ahoy Noah, Yahweh, Shemaiah Sharela, Yahweh, Ahoy Noah, Yahweh, Shemaiah Sharela, Yahweh, Ahoy Noah, Yahweh,
Deuteronomy 6:4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Amen.
Amen. Tapala Yahweh, the Lord's Prayer. Shabbat Shemayim, Kodash, Hayye, Shanker, Yahweh, Malakwav, Daba'ed, Vertazamanka, Hayye, Aisha, Baratizah, Kab, Bashemayim, Lathanawa, Lacham, Yawam, Zad, Wasalakanawa, Kabawaknawa, Kasalaknawa, Kabawakinawa, Wala'ed, Abiyarnawa, Oh, Nasayawan, Abba, Hawashinawa, Murai, Kayed, Lakad, Amalakwa, Wa'alad, Wathaparat, Waiwalam, Amen.
Matthew 6:9. After this man, therefore, pray he, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Amen. Aisha Tazwa, 10 Commandments. La'ad, Yahayim, Lakayim, Alahayim, Akayim, Alpayet, La'ad, Thaishad, Lakayim, Pasod, Wala'ad, Thaibadam, La'ad, Thalakwakat, Shamwa, Yahweh, Alahayaka, Lashawa, Zakhar, F, Hayawam, Hashabat, La Kodashwad, Kabad, Abiyaka, Wa Amaka, La'ad, Tharatazak, La'ad, Gana'at, La'ad, Faganat, La'ab, Tainab, Shakur, La'ab, La'ab, Tachamad, Kau, Asherad, La'aika, Aman.
Exodus 20 in verse 2. I am the Lord thy power, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his maidservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ox, nor his ox, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Amen.
Aman, Shabbat, please be seated. Barak Yahweh, Shimi Hawashai, Asherah, Nanawa, Paria, Gapin, Dwell, Aman. The Yahweh, Shimi Hawashai, Av, Yashakal. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. My boy, I need to go to Washington, stand in face of Jerusalem.
Roma.
Barak Yahweh, Gadah, Raka one, every year, one of one, Malak, Shamayim Baratiza Wakada Barim Kayayam Wagam Amashia Maya Awa Wanawa Abnawa Apalat Yamaitiza Yahusha Zakarnawa Yahawa Bartazawan Ainke Yashawa Zarnawa Bana Waza Yashawa Oh Nanawa Yan Yan Aita Kaya Wamyan Makoda Babakush Shabak Mike Awa Watazuatak Allah Ayam Lad Maganawa Raparnawa Washamar I don't know what by Shalak Haruka Shao Yao Shao Lanawa Alabanawa Rabin Kakame Thabawana what a Shao the Barka Basham Yahosha for what them yet why will English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, great, merciful, mighty, terrible, most high power, King of heaven and earth and all things living, and also the anointed from Yahweh, our Lord, our friend, the wonderful counselor, Yahweh Shai. Remember, Yahweh, favorably your people Israel. Help us build and gather Israel, most high, we beg you, right now, like the days of old. Please send Michael, the righteous powers, to protect us, heal us, and watch over us. Mainly send the spirit of Yahweh Shai to us to teach us much wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of thy word. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you always and forever, so be it. Repeat the Hebrew omen. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the law. Barakata Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherbet, Natan Lanawa, Atharawet. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us light to see. Barakata Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherbet, Natan Lanawa, Award, Lara Awat. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the ram's horn to call the people. Barakata Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherbet, Natan Lanawa, Karan, Ha'ayah, La Korab, Ha'ain. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the olive oil to anoint Israel. Barakata Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherbet, Natan Lanawa, Hasheman, Zayat, Lamashak, Yasha'allah, Yeshua. Please be seated. Okay, so Shalom, Yahweh. Shalom. Shalom, everyone is here with us in Philly. Shalom, everybody watching us on live stream. Shalom, everybody listening in teleconference. Welcome to Yashal Tanas, or Congregation of Israel, where we teach that the descendants of slaves, as well as the indigenous peoples found throughout the North, Central, South America, and the Caribbean mainland, make up the southern and northern kingdoms of the 12 tribes of Israel. Once lost, now found. That we as a low people, we as a people are going to a lower state, politically, economically, religiously, because we both the laws of God and the Bible given to us by Moses. And then we come out of the lower state that we fall into by turning back these commandments we broke by following Jesus the Christ, right? As is stated by the disciple John in his letter, he says, the law came by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. And Peter also says that he was an example for us, that he left us an example that we should follow his steps, who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth. You know, the scripture let us know that sin means transgressing of the laws, any of the laws, right? This is how we follow Christ as our example. And as our particular branch of Christ does others, we keep a Sabbath service on the Sabbath day, which we know the Sabbath goes from Friday, Sunday, and Saturday, sundown. But we and other branches have a Sabbath service in person, and we might televise it either by audio or by visual or both. Okay. And as you guys can see in the scrolling marquee at the bottom, we're back in the Old Testament again as we rotate between the Old Testament, New Testament, and Apocrypha. Now we're in 2 Chronicles chapters 15 and 16. Once again, 2 Chronicles chapter 15 and 16 is what we'll be reading today. My name is Nabia Zerbal. I have the pleasure and privilege of going through the lesson with you guys today. You can write down for your notes. That according to the Gregorian calendar, it would be the 14th of March. Two 2026. And we'll keep count. If I remember that we had so we had our last new moon on a Monday, which this past Monday was the 22nd. So we count from that day up until now, we'll get the day of the month that we're in, right? If you use that method to keep track of telling time. So that would have meant that Tuesday was the 23rd, Wednesday 24th, Thursday 25th, Friday 26th. So that means we'll be in the 26th day of the 12th month and counting. Anybody got anything otherwise, do let me know. But I do remember us keeping the new moon on Monday evening. In case I'm mistaken. So let's get into 2 Chronicles chapter 15, which now we're going into King Asa now, as you guys see in the title, right? Talking about Asa and the full duration of his reign, the good of his reign, the bad of his reign, and even the ugly, if it can be applied, right? That's one thing we can always say about our history in the scriptures. We see that there's not respect of persons, to where if we did good before the Lord and said good before the Lord, it'll be recorded. If we did bad or said bad before the Lord, it will be recorded. And for us now, we can always apply Romans 15:4, which tells us that things written the fourth time written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope. So let's get into it. 2 Chronicles chapter 15 and verse 1. So now this is 2 Chronicles chapter 15 and verse 1. It reads, "And the Spirit of God came upon Azariah, the son of Oded." So this is a certain prophet that prophesied during the time of his reign, right? It says in verse 2, "He went out to meet Asa and said unto him, Hear ye me, Asa, all Judah and Benjamin. The Lord, or Yahweh, is with you, while ye be with him. And if ye seek him, he will be found of you. But if you forsake him, he will forsake you." Right? So making it very plain, in case we didn't get the memo at this point, this is something that we're always going to be mindful of when it comes to serving the Lord, right? It's almost like the Most High holding a mirror up to us when it comes to our language, whether it be language we speak or our body language, as far as what we do, how we carry ourselves, right? To link with the 15:2, we can think of this song in Psalms chapter 18. It says this. Psalms chapter 18. And I'll read from 25 down to 26. A lot of good stuff in the psalm, but I'm going to read this part. Psalm chapter 18 and verse 25, it reads, with the merciful, thou wilt show thyself merciful. With an upright man, thou wilt show thyself upright. With the pure, verse 26, with the pure, thou wilt show thyself pure. And with the froward, this is not the same as forward. Froward means unruly. Thou wilt show thyself froward, right? So you see this in other belief systems. I think Elon calls it karma. We just understand it as judgment from the Lord, right? And we have scriptures that pretty much echo this, where, like in the letters of Paul, he says, "Be not deceived; God is not mocked. Whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap." Right. So the famous "you reap what you sow" is how we would say it, according to our records, according to our culture. Right? So that's what this prophet here, Azariah, is sharing with the king. Also, too, we go back in time to King David, back in First Chronicles towards the end, when King David was making his final salutations. He pretty much said the same thing when it comes to his son carrying forth with the reign after he was stepped down and his son will take over. He said this in First Chronicles, chapter 28. I'll read verses 8 and 9. First Chronicles, chapter 28. I'll read, not 8 and 9, 9 and 10. First Chronicles, chapter 28 and verse 9, it says, and thou, Solomon, my son, know that the God of thy father, and serve him with a perfect heart, with a willing mind. For Yahweh searcheth all hearts, understandeth all the imaginations of the thoughts. If thou seek him, he will be found of thee. But if thou forsake him, he will cast thee off forever. So, same thing. It says in verse 10, take heed now, for Yahweh hath chosen thee to build an house for the sanctuary. Be strong and do it. Right? As he was tasked to build the temple. But then we just gathered the raw materials to help set things up, prepare the things, the raw materials that you would need. And Solomon would be the one to actually supervise the construction of it. Right? That last part in verse 9 echoes what we're talking about now. So I can't stress how important this idea is. Let me read this too. Go back a bit further in time with the salutation that Joshua, right, our commander after Moses, gave us. And he said this too towards the latter time of, or towards the end of his reign too. As he was you could say, arguably our first judge, kind of ushering the time of the judges after Moses ruled over us. Joshua be the one to lead us into the promised land, to be our commander to fight those battles. But in Joshua chapter 24, in verse 20, I'll start from 19. Joshua 24 in verse 19. Once again, Joshua 24 and 19 reads, and Joshua said unto the people, you cannot serve Yahweh, for he is a holy God, he is a jealous God. He will not forgive your transgressions nor your sins. Verse 20. If you forsake Yahweh and serve strange gods, he will turn to do you hurt and consume you after he had done you good. Then it says in 21, and people said unto Joshua, Nay, but we will serve the Lord. And in 22, Joshua said unto the people, Ye are witnesses against yourselves that ye had chosen you and the Lord to serve him. And they said, We are witnesses. Right? So evidence here, right? Like a notary. We have like evidence of people signing off to say, yes, I allow this to happen, or I agree to this contract or this covenant. It says in 23, Now therefore put away, said he, the strange gods which are among you, and incline your heart unto the Yahweh power of Israel. And the people said unto Joshua, verse 24, How our power will we serve, and his voice will we obey. 25, I'll stop here. So Joshua made a covenant with the people that day and set them a statute and an ordinance in Shechem. So nice that example of where we agree to serve the Lord, not the only time, but we see it here. As Joshua makes sure they're committed to this before he gives up the ghost. He's an old man at that point. So now back to the future, our current past, but the future from this point, Joshua. I'm in verse 3 now of 2 Chronicles chapter 15, which reads, Now for a long season Israel had been without the true God, without a teaching priest, and without law. But when they turned in their trouble, but when they in their trouble did turn into Yahweh power of Israel, saw him, he was found with them. Right? So something very important to always be reminded of, right? That anytime we turn back to the Lord, he's going to deal with us. He's going to work with us. And the wording here in 15:3 is very similar to what we read in that prophecy in Hosea, right? Where the Most High has Hosea do a symbolic gesture of going and taking a wife of the borders of the land. And when she would philander, he would forgive her and accept her back as a mirror or as a reflection to show how the Most High will let us back or forgive us when we transgress against him. Right? He won't just utterly cast us off. But I'll read this real quick. Worded similar. This is in Hosea, it's right after the book of Daniel. Hosea chapter 3. Hosea chapter 3 and verse 1, it says, Then said Yahweh unto me, Go yet, love a woman beloved of her friend, yet an adulteress according to the love of Yahweh toward the children of Israel, who look to other gods and love flagons of wine. Right? This is who we're at for the time of Hosea's prophecy. That's who we're up to. Verse 2, So I bought her to me for 15 pieces of silver, and for an omer of barley, and an half omer of barley. And I said to her, Thou shalt abide with me many days. Thou shalt not play the harlot, and thou shalt not be for another man. So will I also be for thee. Right? So instead of symbolic gesture to show how the Most High is dealing with us, he sometimes will have us break it down on a lower level. Have the prophets do certain symbolic gestures, like here we see with Isaiah or Jeremiah and other prophets. It says, For the children of Israel shall abide many days without a king, without a prince, without a sacrifice, without an image, without an ephod, and without teraphim. Right? It's like we just read in 2 Chronicles 15:3. Then it says in verse 5, Afterwards shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God and David their king, and shall fear Yahweh and his goodness in the latter days. Right? So now that last verse going into the future, talking about the time that we're in now and going forward, leading up to the kingdom, right? That last part. So when it comes to the prophecy can jump from time period to time period. But the thing you always need to be reminded of is that constant that's always true which is no matter whether it's past, present, or future, to always resist temptation and to always serve the Lord no matter what. That will never go out of stock. That will never become outdated. So that was Hosea 3, 1-5. Also, if you link that to verse 3, we just read. But back in 2 Chronicles 15, now, I'm in verse 5. Guess I can get one for verse 4 also. I got some links, but I won't going to get all of them. But let me give you guys this one too. This is in Deuteronomy chapter 4. This is verse 4. Deuteronomy chapter 4. I'm going to read verse 29 and also verse 30. So Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 29 and verse 30, where it says, "But if from thence thou shalt seek Yahweh thy power, thou shalt find it. If thou seek him with all thy heart, all thy soul." 30. "When thou art in tribulation, and all these things are come upon thee, even in the latter days, if thou turn to Yahweh thy power and shalt be obedient unto his voice." 31. "For Yahweh thy power is a merciful God. He will not forsake thee, neither destroy thee, nor forget the covenant of thy father which he sware unto them." That's a promise. It is written. Let's not forget it. So in 2 Chronicles 15 again. Okay. So 2 Chronicles 15, now we're in verse 5. It says in 2 Chronicles chapter 15 and verse 5, "And in those times there was no peace to him that went out, nor to him that came in. But great vexations were upon all the inhabitants of the countries." It says, "And nation was destroyed of nation, and city of city, for power did vex them with all adversity." Right? So I know this probably sounds familiar, right? Even though Christ talking about in these times, we know it always happens for the same reason, whether it was a prophecy at the end or something that took place already. The reason why was always the same. It had to do with what? The wickedness of the people and the wickedness that they were doing in the land. Right? I'll quote the key verses from the Beatitudes. Not the Beatitudes, sorry, the Olivet Discourse, that's what the scholars put this as. And the disciples asked Christ, "Which will be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world?" Right? So the one in Matthew 24 reads like this, because it's in 3 different gospels. Matthew 24 and verse 7, where it reads, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom." Right? When we see nation here, it's talking about what they might refer to today as ethnicity, right? Or nationality. Usually when we see nationality today, we think about what your kingdom is. But kingdom is talking about what government you're under, right? Like a driver's license or a passport or something. That would be like your kingdom. Whereas your nation goes into your ancestry. As far as where your forefathers come from. It's funny because even in the Greek, it'll say ethnos here when it says nations. That's where word ethnicity comes from. It comes from the Greek word ethnos. It says, "There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places." Right? So we saw those before this time of Christ, but then they're going to increase as Christ promised. And we see them now. So it's not so much just that they happen, but then why they happen. Also in Mark chapter 13. Mark chapter 13 and verse 8, it says, "The nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be earthquakes in diverse places, and there shall be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrow." So let you know that what? There's still more to come after these things happen as a sign and as an indicator of what the Most High is going to bring to earth. One more, and it will continue. Luke 21. Luke chapter 21 and verse 10. Luke 21 and verse 10, where it reads, "And he said unto them, Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom." Then in verse 11, "And great earthquakes shall be in diverse places, and famines and pestilences, and fearful sights and great signs shall there be from heaven." So, prophetic echoes. Remember, Christ is the word of God. So, anytime the prophet spoke, that was Christ. Christ was there, right, in their words, because Christ represents the embodiment of the Most High's idea, his concept. When he speaks it into existence, Christ is a representation of that. To be sure how connected they are. So let's go back to Chronicles 15. Now we're in 7. He says, "Be ye strong, therefore, and let not your hands be weak, for your work shall be rewarded." Right? So, not let your hands be weak, meaning what? Having the confidence in what the Lord's talking about. Even if the people, the place that you're in, may be dangerous or may be obstinate or resistant to you, still trust in the Lord no matter what, right? We can't hear that enough. So these words, we pull a lot out of these words that this prophet is sharing with King Asa. Let's get this from before. Let's get this in Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 15. We'll get right to the very end. Because this chapter is really awesome, especially towards the end when it talks about Paul calls back to the prophecy in Hosea about how we'll be able to conquer death through this spirit, right? The last verse here in 1 Corinthians 15 and verse 58, 1 Corinthians 15 and 58, it says, "Therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord," right? So shout out to the fruit of diligence, right? Which goes into being consistent, always being persistent and consistent with following the Most High's commandments, right? That's one of our fruits of the Spirit. That's what being steadfast is. "For as much as you know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord." So you work for flesh and blood, your own people, other nations, right? Your reward may not come, right? Sometimes they could hold on to your payment, but a point that comes in one way or the other. They're supposed to pay you every week, every month, annually. That may not come. But on the low side, he always keeps a tally of the work you put in to make sure that he rewards you. Also in Joshua, we'll get to Joshua chapter 1. Joshua chapter 1, I know we usually get Joshua 1 and 8. This time we're going to get 1 and 7. Joshua chapter 1 and verse 7, it reads, "Only be thou strong and very courageous, that thou mayest observe to do according to all the law, which Moses thy servant commanded thee. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that thou mayest prosper whithersoever thou goest." See? So stick to it, stick to the scriptures. theme we can't hear enough of, or we can't let down. So now in Second Corinthians, Second Chronicles. Forgive me if I say Corinthians to the Chronicles. I'm trying to. Second Chronicles chapter 15. If I do, just stop. Second Chronicles chapter 15. Now I'm in verse 8. We're going to see the king, his response to the wise guidance from the prophet. What does he say? So it says in Second Chronicles 15, in verse 8, it reads, and when Asa heard these words and the prophecy of Oded the prophet, and took courage and put away the abominable idols. Where abominable just means something that's utterly detested, something that's hated. The Most High hates idols, and we read during the morning prayers. Out of all the land of Judah and Benjamin, and of cities which he had taken from Mount Ephraim, and renewed the altar of Yahweh, which was before the porch of Yahweh, right? So made sure that he more or less cleaned house, and even the parts there took it over, because we've gone back before the northern and southern kingdom. Took cities, London took cities back. We'll see more of that in the next chapter, unfortunately. But for the cities that we have command over, we made sure to remove any of the idols that were there. It says in verse 9, and he gathered all Judah and Benjamin and the strangers with them out of Ephraim and Manasseh and out of Simeon, for they fell to him out of Israel in abundance when they saw the Lord his God was with him. So we had the main tribes that were there, and even the other tribes that were there, at least part of the regions that we took over, probably in that order between north and south. They all went and followed after King Asa. They saw that the Most High was dealing with him, the Most High was building him up. Right? Once again, it's just a theme that we just always need to be mindful of, where when we do the right thing before the Lord, the Most High will look after us. The Most High will give us rest, give us peace, right? But we just gotta stick to the script, not go against what we were shown from before. Let me give you this real quick too. We read this last time. So this is back in Second Chronicles. So link up this with verse 9. So with 15 and 9, you can link Second Chronicles chapter 11 and verse 16. Just going back to Rehoboam and how Rehoboam strengthened his kingdom, right? After getting that counsel from the prophet and hearkening unto it, right? About the not going to war with the northern kingdom, right? At that time. So it says this in Second Chronicles chapter 11, verse 16. After them, out of all the tribes of Israel, such as set their hearts to seek Yahweh, power of Israel, came to Jerusalem to sacrifice unto Yahweh, power of their fathers. So yeah, it was mainly Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, as we still dealt with the Levites and the Aaronites as far as the righteous work of the temple, and for the cities of refuge and the Levitical cities. Those other tribes that will come down when we had a righteous king in power, even after the split. So we have a similar situation with Asa during this time of his reign. And then I'll get this one too. This is First Chronicles chapter 12. First Chronicles chapter 12 and verse 19 to go along with the same theme. First Chronicles chapter 12, verse 19, it reads, and there fell some of Manasseh to David when he came with the Philistines against Saul to battle, but they helped them not, for the lords of the Philistines upon advisement sent him away, saying, he will fall to his master Saul, to the jeopardy of our hands. So going back to a hairy time when David was trying to build himself up, but it just tells you that the Most High will always send help, even from tribes you may not even think or may not even consider. Because even other nations that we fought with at certain times, they would have been, or the Most High made them into an aid unto us, at least for a period, if you were in trouble with them. Oftentimes their hearts would change, like we saw with the Philistines, right? They weren't sure if they could trust them or not. But yeah, that's First Chronicles chapter 12 and verse 19. It's just some other examples, like I said. Just because the kingdom was split, just because you might be different tribes and whatnot, doesn't mean the Most High won't build up a man that puts him first, even from those who might be not likely to ally themselves with you. So just showing that that alliance that you'll see throughout the history between Judah as well as children of Joseph, be it Ephraim or Manasseh. Well, let's go back to Second Chronicles chapter 15. It says that they did, but then also even mentions Simeon too. If you look at Simeon in the map, their plot of land originally was inside of Judah, right? So they were in the south. But then in history, they ended up going to the north when the split eventually happened, where the mass exodus of the northern kingdom to leave the north part of Israel, which was called Samaria. That won't come until some time later. We'll get there eventually. But this is in 2 Chronicles 15, now in verse 10. 2 Chronicles 15 and 10. They gathered themselves together at Jerusalem in the 3rd month, the 15th year of the reign of Asa. So he's been reigning 15 years at this point. It says they were the 3rd month, so it's like summertime, so warm season. It says in verse 11, and they offered it to Yahweh at the same time of the spoil which they had brought 700 oxen and 7,000 sheep. So a great sacrifice they did here to show their thanks and their appreciation for the Lord, right? This is reminiscent of the different offerings that they did during the time of David and also during the time of Solomon, and it was a grand occasion to come together. So 15:11, let's go back again to First Chronicles. First Chronicles 29. The whole section is verses 20 down to 23. I'm going to read 21. So First Chronicles chapter 29, verse 21. And he sacrificed unto Yahweh and offered burnt offerings unto Yahweh on the morrow after that day, even 1,000 bullocks, 1,000 rams, 1,000 lambs, with their drink offerings and sacrifices in abundance for all Israel. So going to the time when David is coming to the end of his reign, and he's setting up his son Solomon to reign after him. But then we see Solomon have a similar offering, similar showing in 1 Kings chapter 8, this being the time when the temple was dedicated. 1 Kings chapter 8. First Kings chapter 8, the whole section is 62 down to 66, but we're just going to read verse 63. 1 Kings 8 and verse 63, it reads, and Solomon offered a sacrifice of peace offerings, which he offered unto Yahweh, 22,000 oxen and 120,000 sheep. So the king and all the children of Israel dedicated to the house of Yahweh. So whatever you're blessed with, however your increases come, right, you give your best unto the Lord. And like scriptures also tell us in Ecclesiasticus, you never go far enough. If it's not your resource or something that you have in possession, it could be your time, right? Whatever you're able to give, no matter if we're up or low, whether we abound or whether we're based, the key is to give our best unto the Lord. This is Ecclesiasticus chapter 43. Ecclesiasticus chapter 43 and verse 30. Ecclesiasticus chapter 43 and verse 30, it reads, when you glorify the Lord, exalt him as much as you can, for even yet will he far exceed. And when you exalt him, put forth all your strength, and be not weary. You can never go far. Remember, to all the Lord's anyway. The Lord's telling to see that love and that appreciation, right? And that you give back to him what he's given you, which increases his blessing. It's like a feedback loop that works for everybody's benefit. Just when we forget that, that's when things begin to dry up and hardships begin, which we shall see. Let's read on back in 2 Chronicles chapter 15. In verse 12. 2 Chronicles 15 and 12, it says, and they entered into a covenant to seek Yahweh power of their father with all their heart, all their soul. What we read earlier. Check this out. This is a famous verse. Oftentimes we used to read this a lot for camp. That whoso would not seek Yahweh power of Israel should be put to death, with small or great, whether man or woman. Right? So not mattering if you're rich or poor, famous or obscure, man or woman, elderly or youth, we have to seek the Lord. Otherwise, it's serious business. We have to get away with you. We got to take you out. So the king is really setting the precedent here for serving the Lord and making that the popular thing to do. So reading on, it says, I guess we can link this with 12. 13 rather. So let's go back in time again. Let's go back to Exodus. Exodus chapter 22 and verse 20. This also makes me think of we read in the feast of dedication history of Mattathias and his sons, right? The course of Joarib of the priests. How he saw a man committing this sin I'm about to read about, and how he valiantly went, ran up to the man and just slayed him right there. Exodus 22 and verse 20, he that sacrifices unto any god, save unto Yahweh only, he shall be utterly destroyed. Check that out. You know about serving the God, right? But he said to sacrifice too. Specifically, at least in this law, he's supposed to be slain right there. Exodus chapter 22 and verse 20. And then also the whole section is in Deuteronomy 13:6 down to 11. You can write that down where it goes into the same law, but just gives like the scenario where it says somebody close to you, right? Just show that I'm not supposed to spare. I'm not supposed to have respect of persons, even if they're family members or they're your best friend or somebody you work closely with. If anything, you want to make sure that they get the message above all. But it isn't always an easy thing, right? It's a simple thing. It's not complicated, but it can be difficult once you're tied in with certain folks, right? When you're connected to certain folks in a certain way, you now hold back when it comes to them. You're going to see in the case of King Asa, as you read on, we're going to see someone close to him. He's going to even use them, or I want to say use them as an example, but just to show how consistent he is with this idea. We're going to see how he responds when it comes to someone near and dear to him as we read on. But this is Deuteronomy 13. I'll read it 6 down to 11. It says, "Thy brother, the son of thy mother, or thy son, or thy daughter, or the wife of thy bosom, or thy friend, which is as thine own soul," so someone that you're near and dear to, close to, "entice thee secretly, saying, Let us go and serve other gods, which thou hast not known, thou know thy fathers, namely the gods of the people that are round about you," verse 7, in Deuteronomy 13:7. "Namely the gods of the people which are round about you, nigh unto thee, or far off from thee, from one end of the earth even unto the other end of the earth." Verse 8. "Thou shalt not consent unto him, nor hearken unto him. Neither shalt thine eye pity him, neither shalt thou spare, neither shalt thou conceal him. 9. But thou shalt surely kill him. Thine hand shall be first upon him to put him to death, and afterwards the hand of all the people." So you are going to be first to what? Execute the judgment. To show this is not something we ought to do. But you see how it kind of set it up as far as it being someone close to you, someone familiar to you. It says in verse 10, "And thou shalt stone him with stones that he die, because he has sought to thrust thee away from Yahweh power, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage." I always talk about Egypt comes from the Hebrew word for bondage, or to put bounds upon. Mizraim, that's the English, but then it translates into Matazarim. That's the old name for Egypt, that family that came out of Ham. But then the root of that word, Matazar, means to bind or to bound. So that's why we see Egypt, house of bondage. Egypt is the Greek way of saying Matazarim. 11, "And all Israel shall hear and fear, and shall do no more any such wickedness as this is." So like I said, now it's going to come knocking close to even the king's home when it comes to his familial connection. Reading on in verse 14, back in 2 Chronicles chapter 15. 2 Chronicles chapter 15 and verse 14. It reads, "And they swear unto Yahweh with a loud voice, and with shouting, trumpets, and with horns." It says, "And all Judah rejoiced at the oath, for they had sworn with all their heart, and sought him as with their whole desire, and he was found with them, and the Lord gave them rest." So the vision, the hope, the dream was realized, as was promised. just like the prophet Azariah told his forefather, right, that he would receive if they gave, that they would be embraced, that he would find them as long as they went after him. Verse 4, with the upright, that will show itself upright, right? With the froward, the Lord will show himself froward, right? So here we see that being fulfilled, but now I guess what I was talking about a second ago. In Second Chronicles chapter 15 and verse 16, it says, and also concerning Maacah, the mother of Asa, the king, he removed her from being queen because she had made an idol in the grove. And Asa cut down her idol, stamped it, and burnt it in the brook Kidron, right? So look at that region on the map. That was a region where they would take idols and things that were made in the cursed things and burn them up in this place. You see here, even he's setting the stage saying, look, even me as the king, I'm following this too, right? With what my mother did, building this idol. And even she's my mom. I'm still going to what? Take this and destroy it. But now it says, verse 17, but the high places were not taken away out of Israel, unless the heart of Asa was perfect all his days. So it's like we had with the law doing well and we had doing better. So he did well, but to do better, the key was to follow through on all these things, right? To follow through on all these different things, like to destroy the high places too. That's why the kings that are remembered, 3 in particular, see they what? They serve the Lord God all their heart themselves. And they made sure that nobody in the land was dealing with any idols. If anything was set up, that they found it, stamped it out, destroyed it, took it to a place like this brook. Is that we see this thing always being recorded for all the kings that we read about, right? Where they'll say, "Oh, his heart was he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord." They will say, "But the high places remain." The people still were like, "Okay, the king's doing this thing. I still want to do my wicked idolatry over here," and I guess we kind of have like the carte blanche to practice that. But for the 3 kings that we don't read about in scriptures that didn't do that, they're mentioned. I'll read them real quick. This is in Ecclesiasticus again. Little spoiler for we'll read about in Chronicles. We didn't know already. Ecclesiasticus, chapter 49 and verse 4. The link is with verse 17 in 2 Chronicles 15. Ecclesiasticus, chapter 49 and verse 4. Ecclesiasticus 49 and 4 says, all except David and Ezekiah and Josiah were defective. They forsook the law of the Most High, even the kings of Judah failed. So they as a whole failed, but then these 3 can be called out to where they served the Most High with their heart, their soul, and their mind throughout their reign. Even they may have made a mistake or transgressed, they always made sure to seek the Lord and didn't allow for any sideway action. No turning to the left or to the right. It's written Joshua a while ago. It says in verse 18, back in 2 Chronicles chapter 15, now I'm in verse 18. 2 Chronicles chapter 15 and verse 18, it says, and he brought into the house of God things that his father had dedicated, and that he himself had dedicated silver and golden vessels. And there was no more war until the 5 and 30th year of the reign of Asa. So he had rest for a time. So now as you get towards the end, like you see in the title, I have his sweet reformation, right? As he did a lot of cleaning up from what his father had going on, the king before him. But now, towards the end, we're going to see some unfortunate things. Some unfortunate choices and motivation behind those choices. But now in chapter 16 and verse 1, I guess before I go on to, you could just link up with these last couple of verses. This is 1 Kings chapter 15. First Kings chapter 15. The whole section you could say is verse 9 down to 15. You can link this with 2 Chronicles 15. 16 to 19. As well, you can link it with 1 Kings chapter 15 and verse 9, where it reads, "In the 20th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, reigned Asa over Judah." So let us know who was in power when he began his reign, right? Kind of going back to the beginning. We're at the end of chapter 15. We're at the 35th year of his reign before we get into the events of chapter 16 in 2 Chronicles 15. 2 Chronicles. 41 years reigned he in Jerusalem, which we'll see that again when we finish up chapter 16 in 2 Chronicles. His mother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom, right? That's what we read about that had the idol that he disposed of. It says, "And Asa did that which was right in the eyes of Yahweh, as did David his father." It says he took away the Sodomites out of the land and removed all the idols that his fathers had made, right? So he cleaned his own house, even those that came before him. It says, and also Maacah, his mother, even her he removed from being queen because she had made an idol in a grove. And Asa destroyed her idol and burnt it by the brook Kidron, which you read about. Then here's the doing well, but then he didn't do better. It says in verse 14, "But the high places were not removed. Nevertheless, Asa's heart was perfect with Yahweh all his days, and he brought in the things which his father had dedicated and the things which himself had dedicated into the house of Yahweh, silver and gold and vessels." And you read down from here, it's going to go into what we're going to read about also in chapter 16. So it says, back in chapter 16 of 2 Chronicles, but yeah, that was 1 Kings 15, 9 down to 15. So it says in 2 Chronicles chapter 16, "In the 6th and 30th year of the reign of Asa, Baasha, king of Israel, came up against Judah and built Ramah to the intent that he might let none go out or come in to Asa, king of Judah," right? So we read before in the previous chapter, and we saw with Rehoboam, we saw with David, how you had those of northern tribes, the kingdom was split. They were going after the king in the south, the king over the reign of Judah because of their righteousness, right? But as Baasha wanted to break that up. So this section we're reading in here now is going to go pretty much back in 1 Kings 15. It's going to go pretty much from 16 down to about 24. That kind of covers all the different things there, but 16:24 is going to be parallel to what we're reading here in 16 and 1. But 1 Kings 15, 16 down to 21 is where you find the similar events there. But it says in verse 2, 2 Chronicles 16 and 2, "Then Asa brought out silver and gold out of the treasures of the house of Yahweh and the king's house, and sent to Ben-Hadad, king of Syria," which the Syrians we call Aram. So the children of Shem, it would be the Aramites. Don't confuse them with the Assyrians. We hear about them in the news right now, how the spy agencies like CIA and others are working with the Kurds to get them to march on to Iraq. Right? We got to talk about that news. We go to the Kurds on the table of nations. You go back far enough, they would go back to the Assyrians. They were a major player in the earth at one point, right? So musical chairs, rise and fall of nations, right? It says, then Hadad, king of Syria, that dwelt at Damascus, son. So that was when the news cycle was talking about Bashir al-Assad every second before they replaced him with that guy who was the head over Al Qaeda, another group that you do the history on them. It was like the worst kept secret in Washington. They call you the joke and say, "Oh, you mean Al Qaeda? Ha ha ha!" Right? You know, who's really pulling the strings there. Right? They got him now leading the Syria instead of Bashir al-Assad, which came from a line of rulers that ruled over Syria. So Esau just falling into the plan that the Most High has for the nations to be stirred up into battle, move like peace on the chessboard. But he is going to ally himself with this Ben-Hadad, saying this in verse 3, there is a league between me and thee, as there was between my father and thy father. Behold, I have sent thee silver and gold. Go, break thy league with Baasha, or Baasha, king of Israel, that he may depart from me. Right? So the supply, the logistics, whatever relationship or trade you guys have going on, break that off so that he doesn't come down to fight me anymore. It says, and Ben-Hadad hearkened unto King Asa, and sent captains of his armies against the cities of Israel, and they smote Ijon and Dan and Abel Maam, and all the store of the cities of Naphtali. So these being key positions, key spots in the northern kingdom as far as their cities, their towns, right? He's using this this alliance that he has with the Syrians to do this. Let's read on and see how this all turns out. It says, and it came to pass when Baasha heard it, that he left off building Ramah and let his work cease. It says, then Asa the king took all Judah, and they carried away the stones of Ramah and the timber thereof, where Baasha was building, and he built therewith Geba and Mizpah, right? So took their raw materials they pretty much had gathered there, and then repurposed them, and then built them into their own city for what they wanted to do. Right? Once again, we read all these different things happening in 1 Kings 15, as far as King Asa using this alliance to pretty much halt Baasha in his offensive, as far as trying to fight against the Israel that were in the south, mainly Judah, Benjamin, and those that were. There's this verse, this prophecy that you see reference a lot when it comes to this, when it comes to not just what we do, but how we go about doing it. When it comes to the conflicts that we have one with another, even between Israel or between Israel and other nations. But just write down Isaiah chapter 31. Isaiah chapter 31. Think of this as like another warning, even though it's a different nation, but want to make sure when it comes to us working with the other nations, we're just mindful and that we want to make sure we have the Lord first in all that we go about doing. And that while we might use the nations, we don't fully trust them. Go to them first. That's the issue. We want to make sure that we don't fall for it, because when our forefathers did it, it didn't work out too well for them, right? I'm even thinking back to the war of the war of the five kingdoms, right? Against four, going back to Genesis, right? The king of Sodom come to try to break bread with Abraham, because Abraham, he wasn't just some bum. He had like a nice little amount of wealth. He had a nice little entourage with him, and then even Abraham was kind of mindful when the king of Sodom tried to give him gifts, and he said, "Oh no, that's okay. I'm okay with what I had." Lest you say that the king of Sodom made me rich, right? So you read about that back in Genesis 14. So you kind of always see that dynamic there, and then it's kind of coming into play again. You want to? I'm about to read Isaiah. You want to bring out what you're going to say? Now read Isaiah.
Parallel to Deuteronomy 7 and 6, where the Most High says, if thou will, let me get it real quick. Deuteronomy 7 and 6. All right, so Deuteronomy 7 and 6, it says, "For thou art holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself above all people that are upon the face of the earth." Now, going back to Exodus, the 19th chapter, that's where it was first echoed when the Most High gave us the law, right? And that's when we first acquainted with the written covenant, right? In Exodus 19, I read starting in verse 5. So it says, "Now therefore, if you will obey my voice, indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine." So when we keep the law, as we go into in Chronicle, that's what makes us special. And the nation cannot do anything for us. But we would understand that the Most High is the one that, that make us who we are when we keep his commandments. So both verses, Deuteronomy 7 and 6 and Exodus 19 and 5, shows that every time we fall is because we break the law. Every time we rise, then every time we keep the law, then we above, or we become close to the Most High. We become a nation of priests. So that's pretty much the theme of what we're reading in Chronicle here that you're bringing out. It's a rise, fall, and it's always the same reason. Breaking the law, keep the law, breaking the law, keep the law, breaking the law. It's always the same theme.
I was posted a link in the chat. I'll just show you guys a visual real quick, so we have a little break into action. So I'll show it visually too. Let's see. Share screen. This is in the free atlas. I posted the link. Where it's a pretty good atlas that doesn't cost, but as far as their 59th slide on page 94 in this PDF, you guys pull it up. For home, you'll see this red line, this arrow going from Damascus on down, pretty much shows the campaign that this Ben-Hadad the first waged against the king of the north, that pretty much King Asa had helped set in motion his allegiance with him. So that red arrow that you see, there's other arrows going into some events that come up a little bit later. This red arrow coming from Damascus on down, up here in the upper right-hand corner, down into these different cities and regions. That's the part we'll read about now. kind of have a visual of what the Canadians were able to get through working with this king that ruled in Syria at the time. Remember, Syria is Aram, or the Aramites, right? Not to be confused with the Syrian that we said. I'm in verse 7, back in 2 Chronicles chapter 16 and verse 7. So now, let's see, because just like we had Azariah come to give the king words from the Most High on his actions, and, the reminder to seal up this other prophet that comes to King Asa has to say, based on this recent turn of events. It says in 2 Chronicles chapter 16 and verse 7, actually before I read this, I want to read the prophecy about Isaiah. This prophecy in Isaiah is going to somewhat connect with what we're reading here in 2 Chronicles 15. So Isaiah chapter 31 and verse 1. So now Isaiah, he was a prophet during the reign of Hezekiah. He's a little bit later. But the advice is given to the kings, I think it came before Hezekiah or after, I'm not sure which ones, but you can apply it where it's needed, because prophets all the time will reign or will prophesy during more than one king's reign. But we know Hezekiah was definitely a chief one that was the one that Isaiah had good things to say about when it came to these prophecies. Look at the timeline. But Isaiah 31 and 1, it says, "Woe to them that go down to Egypt for help. Stay on horses and trust in chariots, because they are many, and horsemen, because they are very strong. But they look not unto the Holy One of Israel, neither seek Yahweh." See this? So once again, it's not about what we do, but more so, it's about what we do, but it's also about how we go about doing it. If you go about this and your priority is your trust that you have in princes and other men and their resources, that's where the problems come in. Remember what we read before in the last couple Sabbath services in Deuteronomy 17, the law for kings, right? About multiplying horses, multiplying chariots to yourself, that you might go back to Egypt, right? He warned the king that they don't do that, right? So all these things are connected. In verse 2, it says, "Yet he also is wise and will bring evil, and will not call back his words, but will arise against the house of the evildoers and against the help of them that work iniquity." It says, "Now the Egyptians are men, and not God, and their horses are flesh, and not spirit. When Yahweh shall stretch out his hand, both he that helpeth shall fall, and he that is hoping or helped," this is the old English way of saying helped, "shall fall down, and they shall all fail together. Thus saith Yahweh, has spoken unto me, like as the lion and the young lion roaring on his prey, when a multitude of shepherds is called forth against him. He will not be afraid of their voice, nor abase himself for the noise of them. So shall the Lord of hosts, Yahweh of hosts, come down to fight for Mount Zion and for the hill thereof," right? The hill, but also what the hill represents his people, but his people being united with him, right? Seem like they just use this thing all over so much that the kids' new slang now, they say, anytime something is like entertaining or like, well done, it's just like, peak. Oh, it's just peak. Oh, peak this, peak that, everything's peak, right? I'm just like laughing, looking at the scriptures. Yeah, you see that throughout the scriptures, right? As far as the mountain of the Lord being established above the hills, right? Being established on the top of the mountains. So we as God's people, when we're doing what we're supposed to do, we're supposed to be the peak, right? The pinnacle, if you will. Yes, everywhere I look at see this peak. Oh, this is so peak. Oh, this is peak. I see it everywhere now. It says in verse 5, "As birds flying, so will Yahweh of hosts defend Jerusalem, defending also. He will deliver it in passing over, he will preserve it. That last precept is kind of reminiscent of Holy Day that's coming up for Passover, right? The death angel passed over our doors with the blood on the lintel that went to kill the firstborn in Egypt. But we'll have to get into that in the days ahead. But I'll just stop there. This will come up again as you go through Kings, because we're going to have other kings that are going to trust in man more than God. We're going to see if this prophecy is going to come to pass now. Yeah, look at this in Psalms real quick too, before I read the prophecy of Hanani, the prophet. This is in Psalms. Psalms 118. I'm going to read verses 8 and 9. Psalm 118, verse 8 and 9. So Psalms 118 and verse 8, it reads, "It is better to trust in Yahweh than to put confidence in man." 9. It is better to trust in Yahweh than to put confidence in princes. You go against better, but that's the idea. That's the main idea. So you have that in Isaiah 31, 1-5. Let's go back to 2 Chronicles chapter 15. Let's read on verse 7. 2 Chronicles chapter 16, 2 Chronicles 16 and 7. It reads, "At that time, Hanani the seer came to Asa king of Judah and said unto him, because thou hast relied on the king of Syria," right? So there's one thing to use as opposed to rely. It says, "and not relied on Yahweh that power." Through the Most High, he sees the hearts, right? He sees down to not just what we do, but the motivations behind it, because we know sometimes someone can do a good thing, but the spirit behind it is not coming from a genuine or righteous place, right? Like people can be kind or do fruit of the spirit. We talked about this before. Other religions out there, they'll oftentimes mimic our fruit of the spirit that are on our tree of life. They'll show patience, they'll show faith, they'll show even diligence that we talked about earlier, right? Steadfastness. But the why behind what they're doing and how they go about doing it, it's not right. It's not based in the scriptures. So that's what we want to make sure that we make sure we do diligent searches when it comes to matters, make sure a thing is certain. We understand the motivating factors behind why our people and other nations move, and using our resources in the scriptures, like the fruit of the spirit, like the parables of Christ, to make sure that we ascertain that correctly. So it says, "Because thou hast relied on the king of Syria and not relied on Yahweh's power, therefore is the host of the king of Syria escaped out of thine hand. Were not the Ethiopians and the Lubims a huge host with very many chariots and horsemen? Yet because thou didst rely on Yahweh, he delivered them into thine hand." We read about that last time in Kings, right? We read the what the scholars had to write about it, where you see how Ham in general, but Cush and Mizraim, they had a way of doctoring their history when it came to like serious losses that they took, that you had to kind of dig hard to find them, or they kind of just talk past them, put stuff up on their walls about all the glorious things they did, but then for times in history where they took an L or got beat, right, by us or anybody else, it's just like, oh, we can't find it. Oh, it's missing, right? Even the heathen of today, especially our brother Esau, our enemy, they can change things, change the record, change the why behind what went down, or the how something happened, or just remove it altogether. Like I was talking to a coworker this week. I know it's like past Black History Month, but something they brought up that was interesting. He said, "Yeah, you guys might have known about it," but he was talking about this beach that they had down in DC. It wasn't on the ocean. It was kind of like inland, but it was like a popular beach during the times like the 20s. So like not too far off from like the whole what happened with Black Wall Street and stuff like that. And they said how they didn't want our people swimming there. I can't remember the name of the beach that they shut down, but I remember the one in the article. It said the place they had us go to was like kind of dangerous. They said you go there, you Negroes go over there, you can't come here, white only. But this place called like Buzzard Point. I remember that sticks out of my head. I'm like Buzzard Point. It was off the Potomac. They said you guys swim over there. So they did protests and things like that, saying what's going on with this, segregation, et cetera, et cetera. So they said what they agreed on is they said, okay, you know what? We're just going to shut down the whole thing. No one can swim there anymore. And they said they ended up set up the Jefferson Memorial in like the 30s. It was like a couple years later. And you go down there now, unless you know to look for that, you just think, oh, Jefferson Memorial, whatever, don't even think about it. Just that pocket of history, which is important, because you would say, wait a minute. Okay, DC, so that's technically the South, right? The South starts in Maryland. But you would think, on the East Coast, you wouldn't see that kind of thing. That's usually something you might see in the Deep South, maybe parts of the Midwest. And that wasn't that long ago. That was just in the 20s. But if you look on Wikipedia, it's not too hard to find. Look up Buzzard Point on the Potomac and pool, something like that. You'll find the story. But yeah, you can see he brought it up to me. I said, "Oh man!" So I thought, I feel like I'm somewhat learned when it comes to history, when it comes to especially North American history. When it comes to things that they try to cover up, or I know I talked to the brother Hashem Ram in the chat, Shalom Shah Shabbat. We talk or text back and forth sometimes about like different inventors and different things of our people that they try to keep covered up. And that's one thing I've always liked to research, even before I learned the truth. Since I was into STEM fields even as a kid and seeing what we invented. But yeah, we see with the Hamites, they'll do a similar thing where they'll conveniently kind of leave things out and not really plaster up the things when it comes to when they lost. We have the records here in the scriptures to show us win, lose, or draw. And just not for them, but also for our people too. Yeah. The Mizraimites and the Cushites. They'll try not to talk about when they took losses. Yet still, we'll trust in them. Even our forefathers, they knew they were Israel like this time. We'll trust in them over the Lord. And we see the Ethiopians, like he's saying here, how large the host was, they still lost, which you just read about a couple chapters ago, right? It says, I'll read verse 8 again. Were not the Ethiopians and the Lubims a huge host with very many chariots and horsemen? Yet because thou didst rely on Yahweh, he delivered them into thine hand, right? So just to link with 16:8. This is chapter 14, same book. Second Chronicles 14 and 9. Whole chapter is good. It's going to be from 9 down to 12. Second Chronicles 14 and 9. It reads, and there came out against them Zerah, the Ethiopian, with an host of 1,000 and 300 chariots, and came unto Marisha. Then Asa went out, verse 10. Then Asa went out against them, and they set the battle in array in the valley of Zephathah at Marisha. 11. And Asa cried unto Yahweh's power, and said, Yahweh, it is nothing with thee to help, whether with many or with them that have no power. Help us, O Yahweh, for we rest on thee, and in thy name we go against this multitude, O Yahweh. Thou art our God, let not man prevail against thee. So Yahweh smote the Ethiopians before Asa, before Judah, and the Ethiopians fled. So, somewhat reminiscent of like we are kind of reading about now. And you see this when it comes to sports and athletics. Getting off to a strong start in a relay, a race, or a game is good. But to finish strong is better, right? You start off strong, you do well. You finish strong, you do better. So when we look back on carnally sports and athletics, even Paul talks about this, humans run a race, all run to receive a prize, right? We tend not to think about how races or games begin. We tend to remember what happened towards the very end, right? In the fourth quarter, if you will, right? It really comes down to the end. That's what usually sticks in people's minds, and works the same way with our lives too. But we're just regular common folks or rulers on high, right? Heads of companies, countries, who remember about how we ended things, more so than how we started things. Both are important, but we should make sure we have those things in balance. But back in 2 Chronicles chapter 16, I'm going to read in verse 8. I just read 14, 9, and 12, what we read 3 weeks ago when we did Chronicles last time. And that was King Asa too, right? So the same man, but he's just a little older this time, right? Back in 2 Chronicles chapter 16 and verse 9 now. Another verse we like to quote a lot. It says in verse 9, "For the eyes of Yahweh run to and fro throughout the whole earth to show himself strong in the behalf of them whose heart is perfect toward him. Hearing thou hast done foolishly, therefore from henceforth thou shalt have wars." Right? Because he put his heart and his trust in them over the Most High. And he didn't do that before. Right? So now it's being called out or being called against him. So like the verse we read before. You can also link this with Psalms chapter 33. I always like to use these verses to show who the eyes of the Lord are as far as what that presents, in case we don't know. So Psalms 33. In verse 18. Psalms chapter 33 and verse 18. The link of 16 and 9 of 2 Chronicles. Psalms 33 and 18, it reads, "Behold, the eye of the Lord is upon them that fear him, upon them that hope in his mercy." Then you jump down to 34 and 7. You should be on the same page, if not the next page, depending on your Bible. Psalms 34 and 7, it says, "The angel of the Lord, or Yahweh, encampeth around about them that fear him and delivereth them." So you know that the eyes of the Lord are talking about his angels, his messengers, right? What they see the Most High knows. Most High knows all, but he just kind of has them as like a vehicle, right? That when they come on his behalf, whatever they observe, which is everything, right? That represents the Most High's awareness. Someone tells us on a carnal level, we send out messengers or ambassadors to go certain places, and they report back to their ruler, report back to their head of state or their company. If they're like someone representing a corporation, they report back to show their leadership their findings, right? So they have that awareness. We get this other word of revelation in a vision that John Revelator had. We see the same connection being shown as far as the eyes and angels. Like people say, "I need you to go to this event. I need you to be my eyes and ears for me. Right? Check everything that's happening there and report back to me what you come across, what you find out." So this is in Revelation. Revelation chapter 5 and verse 6. Revelation chapter 5 and verse 6. It reads, "And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne and of the four beasts," like the one that Ezekiel saw, "in the midst of the elders stood a lamb as it had been slain," right? You go into this lamb represents Christ, right? "Having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of power sent forth into all the earth," right? So referring to the righteous government that's in the third heaven. It says this lamb has 7 horns and 7 eyes. Those 7 eyes represent the archangels, which we know in scriptures 4 are named, 3 are not. But we see eyes and angels being compared again in this vision. So we know what the prophet Hanani is talking about. So back in 2 Chronicles 16, now we're in verse 10. So Mosai's checking him, and Hanani delivering a message to King Asa on him trusting in men more than the Most High. Let's see his response. 2 Chronicles chapter 16, in verse 10. Actually, before I read on, let me give you guys these other verses too. Zechariah chapter 4 and verse 10. Zechariah chapter 4, verse 10. Where it reads, "Who have despised the day of small things, for they shall rejoice. They shall see the plummet in the hand of Zerubbabel with those 7. They are the eyes of Yahweh which run to and fro through the whole earth." Right? Once again, referring to the top tier of the Most High's host, right? And how they travel. Also, Proverbs chapter 15. Proverbs chapter 15 in verse 3. Proverbs chapter 15 in verse 3, it reads, "The eyes of Yahweh are in every place, beholding the evil and the good." Once again, Proverbs 15 and 3. And I'll give you one more and then we'll continue. Job 34 and 21. Job chapter 34 and verse 21. So Job chapter 34 and verse 21, it reads, "For his eyes, that his you read above is the Most High, are upon the ways of men, and see it all his goings." So as much as Esau, right, the wicked, as much as they want to be like the Most High, like Isaiah prophesied in chapter 14, they wish they could see it on the level and the depth and the breadth that the Most High can see. To where the Most High always sees everything. They try to do with their surveillance and their satellites and their cameras. But the Most High and his host, they can see through your hearts, your mind. They can read not only what you do, but even your motivation and what your thoughts are before you make an action, whether it be something you say or something that you do. So Esau wishes he could have that level of vision, right? That was the guy from Star Wars, the Emperor, talking about, my enemies, they'll cower before such a vision. You lack vision. Right? He wanted to have that vision to be like the Most High, see everything, see everybody, but try to turn against him. How is that a way to rule? Everybody everybody's trying to rebel against you. So that should be a cautionary tale, even though that's fiction, but take a lesson from that. But back in 2 Chronicles 16, I'll read verse 10. So that was Job 34:21. Job 34:21. Proverbs 15:3. Proverbs 15:3, and also Zechariah 4:10. Zechariah 4:10. Added those on to verse 9. So 2 Chronicles 16:10, it says that Asa was wroth with the seer and put him in a prison house. Anytime you got kings locking up prophets of the Lord, it's just it's a bad look. Anytime. Both then and now. For he was in a rage with him because of this thing, and Asa oppressed some of the people at the same time. So, unfortunate fall from grace. It's not good. And it's just like, what did the people do to deserve that? And I think of Galatians 4:16, right? We use this camp a lot. Hanani, the prophet, that asked the king the same thing. My Lord, my king, have I therefore become your enemy because I tell you the truth? Apparently so. Reading on in verse 11. And behold, the acts of Asa, first and last, lo, they are written in the books of the kings of Judah and Israel. First Kings 15 going down talks about these same events that we're talking about now. It says, and Asa in the 30 and 90 year of his reign. So we jump from 36 to now 3 years later. Was diseased in his feet until his disease was exceeding great. Right? So from that long reign of prosperity, right? And the good works and a good name. Now look at how in his latter years things just come to a head, right? Just 3 years later after this point, the Most High now has him afflicted with this disease in his feet. And it says the disease became exceeding great. But now look at this. Yet in his disease he sought not to Yahweh, but to the physicians. Remember, I told you before, it's not saying having allies is wicked, right? It's not saying having physicians, which is like an ally for your physical body, where it's like having an ally as far as warfare is could be an assistant for the governing body to protect oneself, right? Or to increase oneself if you're having allies for the purposes of trade or things like that. That's not wicked. But when those things are your livelihood over the Most High, who allows you to have health, that allows you to have, the nations work for you instead of against you. And you forget that, that's how things can turn out for you. In Ecclesiastes 38, from 1 down to, let me see the verse where it ends. And I know we'll get to this eventually. We go through Ecclesiastes, so we won't read it, but definitely going to check out as they go into this whole thing. Yeah, down to 15, Ecclesiastes 38, 1 to 15. You can link with verse 12. So at 16 and 12, you can link it with Ecclesiastes 38, 1 down to 15. Where it pretty much goes to this whole dynamic in the finer detail as far as how the physician is a blessing. Hell, Luke, one of the disciples of Christ, he was a physician. He was a doctor. Right? It's not saying that being a physician is wicked. It's just the fact that knowledge and that ability the physician has, just because he or she has that gift, that doesn't say now that you just look up to them and trust in them over the Lord that gave them the talent and the skill to do what they do. You see? Because it's easy to thank flesh and blood, right? Be it someone has money or someone has a certain gift or talent. He said, "You saved my life. You saved my life." And that person in the right spirit, they'll say, "Oh, listen, I'm just used as a vessel. Ultimately, the Lord saved your life. He just happened to use me and my gifts or my resources to help you." And pretty much at the very end, in the final verse of that section, it says, "Whoever sinneth against his maker, let him fall into the hand of the physician." Because now you trust in them so much. Now they're the only hope you got to survive. And more or less, Godspeed with that, because it's still up to me anyway. If that's what you want to make into your God or your protection over me. So we see that King Asa didn't get the lesson. Almost like his heart got hardened, where he said, "I'm gonna trust in the Lord more now." And it's just like, I'm sure he probably had somebody close to him say, "My Lord, my King, but think about like what Nani said is true about how God blessed you with the fight against the Egyptians." It's just like he's got hard towards those last years. He even had to get in the disease in his feet. He still didn't want to go back to the Lord. So, cautionary tale at the least is make sure we don't fall in the same way, right? Of course, we're not at the same level of Asa as far as position, but we can trust in man more than God or something else before God in the same way. Let's make sure we don't fall into that same trap. Reading on in verse 13, it reads, "And Asa slept with his fathers and died in the 140th year of his reign." Right? So just 2 years after that, he gave up the ghost. 14, "And they buried him in sepulchres which he had made for himself in the city of David, laid him in the bed which was filled with sweet odors and diverse kinds of spices." So kind of we read about with Christ, when the women came to bring the sweet spices and odors, right, to anoint his body. You read about that. They do that with Joseph too, right, when he was buried, when he died, and they got his bones out of Egypt too afterwards, right? It's like a little tribute. But yeah, with verse 14, chapter 16, verse 14, you just link it with Mark 16:1. Mark chapter 16, verse 1. Where it reads, "And when the Sabbath passed, that was the 3 days and 3 nights at that point that Christ promised. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome had brought sweet spices that they might come and anoint him," right? So that's what we did. And then even going back into on the time of Joseph, Genesis chapter 50. Genesis chapter 50. It says, "And Joseph commanded his servants and his physicians to embalm his father." Oh yeah, I think later on it talks about him, but at the end of this book, at the end of this chapter, Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father, and the physicians embalmed Israel. It says in 40 days, in verse 3, in 40 days were fulfilled for him, for so are fulfilled for the days of those which are born. It says, "And the Egyptians mourned for him 80 days," right? It's kind of interesting to mention the Egyptians just because they know how important Joseph was to them at that time, right? But just the fact that Joseph's father and then kind of becoming acquainted with him later on and him dying, that's like a still a major event. This was like, wow, this is the man that gave birth to Joseph, our great ruler, our great prime minister, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like a state funeral. Like today's times, the 21 gun salute, to carry out the coffin with the American flag covering up the coffin, doing the gun salute, the trumpet sounding, all that kind of stuff. So he was like a major state figure at that point, even for the Egyptians, even though he was a stranger in Hebrew. But yeah, just showing the involvement. So that's kind of another topic we can get into there. Genesis chapter 50, verse 2. So I'll read 14 again, last verse of 2 Chronicles 16. And they buried him in his own sepulchres, which he had made for himself in the city of David, and laid him in a bed which was filled with sweet odors and diverse kinds of spices prepared by the apothecary's art. They made him a very great burning fan. So that's like a pyre they call when you do a burning for him. So yes, we embalm bodies, right? Wasn't something else to say wicked. It's just with other nations, they just take it to the level, like with the Hamites, where we see what they did, even when it comes to the pyramids. Like that was just a very elaborate tomb. Like if you really think about it and sit back on it, like, that was like vainglory on like the highest level. You have all these people, all this blood, sweat, and tears that go into tombs, and then have all those things buried in there with him. And that Pharaoh had even servants being buried with him, right? Were still alive, right? Just because they loved their Pharaoh so much. You just say, man, the Egyptians were so great. How could they do this to this extent? And all their power, they were fools. Righteous standpoint. But nothing wrong with mourning for the dead and giving them a proper burial. But you can't go too far with it. So in chapter 17, we come here a couple weeks from now, we'll get into Joseph, right? Who's definitely a fun and interesting king to read about. And some of the feats that he accomplished and some of the dealings that he had, especially his dealings with the northern kingdom, namely what they call the Amorite dynasty, which was Omri, followed by his son Ahab. So it's going to be some interesting reading there and get into that part of the story. So hand it back.
Yeah, this is Jeremiah, chapter 34. Go to the last precept. Because it says, and they made a very great burning for him. Burning means sometimes you might, there's questions about cremation and stuff like that. So this is Jeremiah chapter 34 and verse 5. Actually, I'm going to start from 4. It says, "Yet hear the word of the Lord, O Zedekiah, king of Judah. Thus saith the Lord of thee, thou shalt not die by the sword, but thou shalt die in peace, and with the burnings of thy fathers, the former kings which were before thee. So shall they burn odors for thee, and they shall lament thee, saying, Lord, for I have pronounced the word, saith the Lord." Right? So the burnings is like a ceremonial thing of them burning the sweet spices and odors at his burial. Right? So it was like a customary thing that they did. And I think when you go to Second Chronicles 21, we'll get to it a little later, but Second Chronicles 21, and 20. Second Chronicles 21 and 20. It says, 32 years old was he when he began to reign. And he reigned in Jerusalem 8 years and departed without being desired. Howbeit, they buried him in the city of David. That's not the one. Because there's another one that said that they didn't do the same burnings
like he did before. Salaki, that's not the precept of
I'm trying to think if I know with the other nations, you kind of see, I think we even did it too during the Dark Ages in ignorance, where we burned the body.
Oh, it was a verse before. Salaki. Yeah, I read 20. I should have read started from I'll start from 18. Yeah, 21, 2 Chronicles 21:18. It says, and after all this, the Lord smote him in his bowels with an incurable disease. And it came to pass that in the process of time, after the end of 2 years, his bowels fell out by the reason of his sickness. So he died of sore diseases, and his people made no burning for him, like the burning of his fathers. Right. So he wasn't, it was as if he wasn't honored enough to have that performed at his burial.
They do cremations?
No, it said that that's what you would think. The burnings was the odors, the spices.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, because I mentioned like a pyre, because I know sometimes with the other nations, our people following ignorance. Like we did this, I think, in the Dark Ages too. We were like following the Druid practice and things like that. We would set the body ablaze, but it's not something you read about that we did in righteousness that was customary. Or they would set fires, not necessarily the burning of the body, but they just like set fires for like a funeral. Like we'll see them have like a bed with like sticks around it, with like firewood around it, and then they'll set it ablaze and they'll stand around it. Or sometimes you'll see where they'll put a body in a boat and then push the boat off into like the lake or whatever, and then they'll arch with good aim will send like one arrow with a burning tip. It'll land on the boat, and the boat will be burning out in the lake. But like I said, you don't, like you said, what we did wasn't that. But the heathen, like I said, they'll have something similar rituals, but they'll do different things with the body. We burn bodies, but it was not for good. That's if you were doing some wickedness, you get burnt, like adultery, for example.
Was that Achan? Didn't he get burned?
I think so. I believe so. Let's see.
So I check Chronicles 21.
Joshua is 7, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's Joshua 7:25. I did Jeremiah.
Yeah, and then another example. I thought about it earlier. I didn't pull it. Was yeah.
Oh, you may read it?
I mean, yeah, if you want.
This is Joshua chapter 7. I'm going to read from 24. And Joshua and all Israel with him took Achan, the son of Zerah, and the silver, and the garment, and the wedge of gold, and his sons, and his daughters, and his oxen, and his asses, and his sheep, and his tent, and all that he had. And they brought them into the valley of Achor. And Joshua said, why hast thou troubled us? The Lord shall trouble thee this day. And all Israel stoned him with stones and burned them with fire after they had stoned them with stones. Right? So first they stoned them and then they set them ablaze. So like you said, this wasn't like in the form of a cremation that you think today. This was like a judgment because they had taken of the accursed thing when they had gone to take the spoils. The Lord said, don't take that for yourself. And that's what he did. And the family, because it said his sons and his daughters also got taken, right? So it's like they also took or partook of the accursed thing, and the judgment fell upon the whole household, right? Even to the animals. Now, I want to say with that, even the animals, the asses and everything, Most High's making a point, making a statement, right? And then it says, and they raised over him a great heap of stones unto this day. So the Lord turned from the fierceness of his anger, wherefore the name of that place was called the Valley of Achor unto this day.
Don't do this, kids.
21. 18.
Whatever you do, kids, don't do this. I thought about it earlier, but as far as the fire being offered up, that was Joshua 7:24. You started 20 at the end, right?
Correct.
Leviticus chapter 10. 1 down to 1 to 7 is the whole thing. As far as Aaron's two eldest boys offering strange fire. So, it's one thing to offer incense for a king, but when it came to the Most High's burning, right, he was very specific in what he wanted. But Aaron's two eldest sons decided to get creative. It says in Leviticus 10:1, and Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, took either of them his censer and put fire therein and put incense thereon and offered strange fire before Yahweh, which he commanded them not. And there went out fire from the Yahweh and devoured them, and they died before Yahweh. So this is fire protected from the Most High. Not even fire that we live. It's mankind, flesh and blood. The Most High has had fire manifest and cook them. Then Moses said unto Aaron, this is it that the Lord spake, saying, I will be sanctified in them that come nigh me, and for all people I will be glorified. Aaron held his peace. That's a tough deal. It's like the two oldest boys. Man, what a gut check. And Moses called Mishael and Elzaphan, the sons of Uziel, the uncle of Aaron, said unto them, come near, carry your brethren from before the sanctuary out of the camp. So they went near and carried them in their coats out of the camp, as Moses said. Moses said to Aaron and to Eleazar and to Ithamar, those are his two younger sons, uncover not your heads, neither rent your clothes, lest ye die, lest wrath come upon all the people. But let your brethren in the whole house of Israel bewail the burning, which the Lord hath kindled. And ye shall not go out from the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, lest ye die. For the anointing oil of Yahweh is upon you. And they did according to the word of Moses. So as you see here, Moses wasn't playing. He said, don't you cry for them. Don't you dare. Let them cry. You better not. Woo! Most High, when he says something, sets the guideline, sets the precedent, says, look, I'm dealing with you and your sons afterwards for a holy covenant. This is serious business. We can look at David in a similar fashion, right? You and your sons that come after you, I'm setting a precedent when it comes to the line of kings now. So the line of priests and the line of kings, we can really just meditate on both of those family lines, and the Most High dealt with them as far as making sure that they didn't miss the mark, that they adhered to the righteous judgment. But that's Leviticus 10, 1 to 7. On the topic of the burning. Okay, so that's it. Like I mentioned before, we're going to get into the Jehoshaphat more so next time. Here we'll make it end. Keep in mind that we're talking about the Passover coming up, but remember the next holy day is going to be a couple days from now. Wednesday, Sunday next week, which will be the new moon and the new year. So make sure you guys are ready for that. I'll send out a message to the distribution just as a reminder. And just kind of keep an eye out for email too. At least, share with you guys new calendars as well as, Passover menu, which will be more or less the same, and the modern names for 11, which I don't think I think I might have added one or two things to check out, but look out for the previous year. But those should be the same as well, right? Anytime you see that sodium bicarbonate or sodium biphosphate, anything along those lines, just being chemistry names for what we call 11. But look at that. So you kind of go through your pantries, go through your your closet where you store your stuff. Like the key places are obviously the kitchen and the bathroom. Those are the key places you'll look at in your dwelling. For anything that has 11 or things that go by other names, but they're still. So you remember that. Next week we'll be back in the New Testament for next Sabbath. We did Matthew 26. So I'll make sure to give you guys an update to the Sabbath readings. So we just did Matthew 26 by itself. It's kind of with a meatier subject matter. So I'll make the adjustment for Matthew to count by 2 chapters going forward, but then we'll just back them up. So instead of like you might see Matthew 28 to Mark chapter 1, it'll be Matthew 27 and 28, and then it'll be Mark 1 and 2, Mark 3 and 4, Mark 5 and 6, Mark 7 and 8. It actually kind of measures it back into, it'll be starting with Mark the week after, well, I should say the New Testament week after this next week, which will be 4 weeks from now. Hold on. Yeah. When we do the New Testament again, it'll be Mark 1 and 2. So instead of Matthew 28 to Mark 1, it'll be Matthew 27 and 23. We did Matthew 26 by itself. Like I said, I'll make sure you guys have access to that. Updated Sabbath reading list. Let's do our housekeeping. So every Tuesday and Friday from 7 to 10 p.m., we have our class. We will definitely compel new folks that are just coming into the knowledge of the truth that you're sharing the truth with. Have them come to one of these classes, either by teleconference, that we see at the bottom, 667-770-1085. The access code 521-455, right? Tuesday and Friday from 7 to 10 p.m. And we have a Zoom that we do along with that, which as long as you have Zoom installed on your device, be it a phone or a tablet or a laptop or a desktop, open up your web browser on said device and go to this website, which is profitabletalks.com, www.profitabletalks.com, no spaces. They'll ask you to open up this in Zoom, just click the blue button in the middle. And as long as you're logged in with like the Gmail, whatever email account you have into Zoom, it'll pull you right in to the class at that same time, 7 to 10 p.m. Tuesdays and Fridays. And it shouldn't ask you for any code. Just like I said, as long as you're logged into Zoom, it should be fine. Also, you want to donate for your tithes or your temps, or for holy days, if we have the Passover coming up, $200 per household. We've kept consistent over the last couple decades, right? You want to donate it here as a check or money order to the address you see scrolling at the bottom. And that spelling you see there too, Ha Yasha Kanas, HAYASHA and then Kanas, KANAS, right? Just spell it that same way. 3826B as a boy, Germantown Avenue, 19140. And if you want to donate electronically, as opposed to with a check or money order, we have paypal.me/HYK12, paypal.me/HYK12, or you can Zelle us at 646-620-7378. Please like and share the video, as we want to get the word out there to more and more people about who we are as a people in the modern day Americas, why we're in a lower state, and what we got to do to come out of it. As we see the times are at hand, we see more and more problems coming to pass, especially with the Third World War brewing, as we've been talking about during the class times. Concerning what's going on with the spirit of the kings of the Medes, which they call Iran today, right? As that prophecy is what being fulfilled. And even with the things that they leak out there, like their general, I think it's Wesley Clark, had that famous speech he did on Democracy Now! About there's a memoir I have here that the Pentagon put out. They want to take over 7 countries in 5 years. In that video that they put out, and people are still going back to it as a reference, saying, "Yeah, these guys, Even though it took them longer than 5 years, they pretty much checked off all those countries and put somebody they wanted in those countries. But on that list, it's those same countries that are what? Going to be allied with Russia in the Third World War. So whether they're aware of it or the devils that are behind them are aware of it, them trying to offset that prophecy, we know it's a joke because them trying to take over those countries to prevent whatever type of war or try to get whatever control they want. All they're going to do is make it happen. They're just going to make those same countries ally with Russia so that the Third World War can happen. We talk about that in our classes too, as far as that prophecy about God made God in Ezekiel 38. But yeah, continue to watch these things and pay attention because man lies, but most side doesn't lie. It's just a matter of being able to have eyes to see it, ears to hear it, and a heart to understand the prophecy of the scriptures so that we can make sure we protect ourselves. First up here when it comes to our spirit, then physical. All right. So with that, we'll say Shah Shabbat. Definitely enjoy the rest of your Sabbath day. Hopefully it's an eventful one. Try to find some activities that teach you about Most High's wisdom, or to go into like what God made in nature. I always say it's always a good one to check out if you're not really sure of what to look into if you're not reading the scriptures. Just check out something that deals with nature or current events. There's always things to do on the Sabbath. It's not like I can't do anything, just read the Bible, because even while you're looking at current events, looking at nature shows and things like that, that's all just deal with God's wisdom anyway. Right? How you made things. Okay. So let's do that closing prayer. Most High will talk to everybody in the upcoming Tuesdays and Friday classes. And remember, Wednesday sundown is going to be the first new moon and the first of the year as well. Oh, I didn't say it in the beginning. This just means peaceful Sabbath, Israel, or happy Sabbath. This is a Shah, Abba, Atha, or Shabbat. A Shah, Allah, Wa, and Allah, which just means Shalom, peace, or peaceful. A Yah, a Shah, a Ra, and Ah, and Allah, or Yasharal, Israel. For folks watching on the phone, a Shah, Abba, Atha, Shabbat. A Shah, Allah, Wa, Allah, Shalom. A Yah, a Shah, a Ra, Ah, and Allah. Yasharal, or Israel. And on the regular screens at the bottom, but then folks watching on the mobile, it's up here. Shabbat Shalom Yasharal. Rokateo, Shimi Hawashai, Hasharan, and now for your captain for that month. Like, how about Shimi Hawashai? Yashral. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine, thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. You're welcome, beneficiaries. Yahweh,
Yahweh,
Ba'ashem,
Ba'ashem,
Yahushai,
Yahushai,
Habakushai,
Yahushai,
Shema,
Shema,
Lanawa,
Lanawa,
Laita,
Laita,
Yamyan,
Yamyan,
Laita,
Laita,
Shalat,
Shalat,
Mike Allah,
Kala,
Wala Alahayim,
Wala,
Tatzvadaki,
Tazadaki,
La,
La,
Shemar Ad,
Small Eye,
Barak,
Barak,
Rapah,
Rabah,
Magan,
Magan,
Wakaziyak,
Wakaziyak,
Lanya,
Lanya,
Yashala,
Yashala,
Washalak,
Washalat,
Lanawa,
Lanawa,
Rabian,
Rabian,
Kakama,
Kakama,
Rabian,
Rabian,
Ya'ai, Rabian,
Rabian,
Bayana, Rabian, Sabalanwa,
Sabalonwa,
Rabian,
Rabian,
Amawan,
Amawan,
Rabian,
Rabian,
Aqua,
Aqua,
Rabian,
Rabian,
Ahabi,
Ahabi,
Rabian,
Rabian,
Hagana,
Hakana,
Rosanai,
Rosanai,
Vasala,
Wasalat,
Kao, Katsayano,
Katsayimna,
La Akim,
La Akim,
Akiwa,
Wa'akiwa,
Yasha Allah,
Yashala,
Yad,
Yad,
Waibulam,
Waibulam,
Bashem,
Basha,
Yahawashah,
Yahushua,
the water,
the water,
Aman.
Aman.
English translation. Yahweh, in the name of Yahushua, please listen to us now. Right now, send Michael and righteous powers to watch over, bless, heal, protect, and make strong the children of Israel. And send to us much wisdom, much knowledge, much understanding, much patience, much faith, much brotherhood, much love, much spiritual protection, and forgive all our sins. For the brothers, sisters in Israel, always and forever, in the name of Yahushua, thank you, so be it. Four corners prayer. Yahweh,
Yahweh,
Ba'ashem,
Basha,
Yahushua,
Yahushua,
Raknawa,
Raknawa,
Yasha'ala,
Yashala,
Obat Yasapari,
Sorry.
Shema,
Shema,
Yashirele, Yahuwah, Allahu Nawa, Yahuwah. English translation, we said, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, bless us in Israel in the house of books. And then we said, Hear Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. With that, we'll say Shah Shabbat once again. Wa Ma'asah Tawab, good afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your Sabbath, Israel. Continue to watch and pray as you get closer to that day.